is my great pleasure to present to you RoboCop. Come on. That's for you. Go, Robo.
Hello and welcome back to more Films Under Constant Critique, where we take a look at films, some good, some bad, and some downright awful. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Maverick, Dren, Zaria. This week we're taking a look at the film RoboCop.
I fucking love that guy. Okay, so... yeah, this is another episode of you hadn't seen it, so
nope.
Now we're gonna do a podcast on it. Well, in the words of Dick Jones, now it's time to erase that mistake. Okay, so RoboCop was released on July 17th, 1987. It cost $13.7 million and made $53.4 million.
That's a pretty good return.
It was directed by Paul Verhoeven, and he has a very fascinating filmography.
I feel like we've talked about him at one point before on the show.
Some of his other credits include Total Recall.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Which has some... I don't know if you've seen Total Recall, but there are some...
Yeah.
You have seen it?
Yeah.
It definitely has a lot of overlap with RoboCop.
Yeah.
Including having the same guy playing one of the main villains.
That's right.
Yeah, Roddy Cox is in both of those movies. He also directed Basic Instinct.
Oh.
Might be a bit of a stretch, but it's a little bit different from RoboCop. Showgirls.
Okay.
Which that one's a masterpiece, but for a different reason. This is going to make total sense to you, but Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
Starship Troopers, again, I don't know, have you seen Starship Troopers?
I've seen parts of it.
The tone and feel of it is very, very similar to RoboCop.
Yeah.
Right down to, like, the fake ads and stuff. And Hollow Man.
I don't know what that one is.
Kevin Bacon is the Invisible Man.
Oh, okay. I know what that one is.
It is not a good movie. And actually, Paul Verhoeven has a cameo in this movie.
Really?
Which I will mention that when we get to it. So the cast. This has a pretty good cast.
Yes. A lot of Twin Peaks actors make an appearance.
I knew you were going to say that. Because one thing I've realized the past few times I've watched this is that Leland Palmer is in this.
Yes, as one of the bad guys.
He plays Leon Nash in this. So now whenever I watch this movie, now that I've seen Twin Peaks, I'm like, Leland Palmer is in RoboCop. That's amazing to me. Who else? Yeah, Miguel Ferrer. He was also in Twin Peaks as
Alfred.
Agent Rosenfield.
Albert. What am I saying? Alfred.
He played Alfred in the Batman animated series. And something I hadn't realized until doing a bit of reading, apparently Miguel Ferrer is George Clooney's cousin.
Really?
Did not know this until I was looking.
You would not be able to tell by looking at him.
There was another guy. Oh yeah, Dan O'Hurley. He's also in Twin Peaks.
Yes.
And he's also in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Yeah, I knew that one. He's very recognizable, I feel.
He's been in a lot of movies, but generally I associate him with this movie and Halloween 3. Those are like the two ones I think.
Yeah, I think Halloween 3 is the one I definitely know him by.
I'll admit I'm not the biggest fan of Halloween 3, but he's pretty good in it.
Yeah.
The main star of this is Peter Weller, I'll admit, sometimes I go out of my way to watch movies that Peter Weller's in because I'm like, oh, RoboCop's in this movie, you know. But some of his other movies include The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai,
Huh.
which, if you thought Everything Everywhere All at Once was hard to summarize, imagine trying to do a podcast on that movie. Like, I don't know if we'd be able to.
It looks like he also played Batman in one of the animated movies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he was in Dark Knight Returns. That's right. I forgot about that. He's also in Leviathan, which is one of the better Alien / The Thing ripoffs. Naked Lunch, David Cronenberg movie. That's another really weird movie.
And then I think I mentioned this when we did the Rambo episodes, but he also ended up being in Mortal Kombat 11 as RoboCop.
Yes, I believe so, yeah. Nancy Allen, which she was in several Brian De Palma movies, including Carrie. Dressed to Kill, and Blowout. Very different role for her in this movie than in those movies. We also got Ronnie Cox, who I mentioned earlier. He plays Cohagen in Total Recall, basically the same character as in this.
Yep.
Except he's a little more cartoonish in Total Recall, I think.
Yeah. Well, everything's a little bit more cartoonish in Total Recall.
He's also in Beverly Hills Cop, and he's the dueling banjos guy from Deliverance.
Oh, really?
Yes. So he's been in some interesting movies. And he's another one of those actors that, like, I'll see him in a movie and I'll be excited because he was in RoboCop. You know? A returning cast member, Kurtwood Smith. This is his third time appearing in a movie that we've done on this podcast.
I know he was in.
He finally gets a role where he actually does stuff. So he was in Rambo 3, and he's in Broken Arrow as well.
Oh, he's in Broken Arrow?
Yep. He's the Dick Cheney looking guy in Broken Arrow. And apparently this is also another movie on the podcast we've done that features a John Landis cameo.
He's just showing up everywhere, isn't he?
Because he had a cameo in Darkman.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would not have expected that John Landis would be a recurring cast member on this podcast. And yeah, we mentioned Ray Wise, Leland Palmer is in this movie.
Yep.
Returning composer, too. We got Basil Polidorus.
What else did he do?
Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer.
Oh.
And this is another great score. And yeah, we can get to our initial thoughts now.
Yeah, so I like we mentioned earlier, this was my first time ever seeing this movie. And so I basically went into it knowing very little. I knew that he was originally a cop that was basically killed. And then they brought him back as a robot, and that's like all I knew about this going
Bare minimum, yeah.
Yeah.
And like maybe a few references that I've made on the podcast.
Yeah, and then of course I recognize some of the more famous lines, like, you know, "Your move, creep," or "I'd buy that for $1."
Yeah, I think I have said that before on this podcast.
So I really went in just knowing nothing, and I had a really fun time watching this one. It was just a great experience overall, just watching this insanity play out. But unlike Everything Everywhere All at Once, it's insanity, but it's like coherent completely.
I knew going in that was going to be the case, but I'm like, this is a much easier to follow movie than that. So recapping this is not going to be much of a problem, especially since I've seen it multiple times. So I'm pretty familiar with the plot beats and like the characters and the storyline, because... And if you want to know what my thoughts are on this movie, all you need to know is that I have a poster of it on my wall. I own 2 copies of it.
Oh, wow.
I have the Blu-ray of it.
Hmm.
And I own the Criterion Collection DVD of it, which that makes this the first movie we've done on the podcast that's in the Criterion Collection.
That took us a while.
This is one of my favorite movies of all time, actually. What I love about it is it takes a concept which very easily could have come across as like too much like a B movie.
Hmm.
And not only does it well, but it also has plenty of humor and legitimate pathos.
Yes.
It is really impressive how this manages to balance the tone, between some of the sillier parts and some of the more serious parts.
Hmm.
And it's not only a great sci-fi movie and a great action movie, it's also a great satire, too.
Yes. It's very upfront about its message, you can tell. And it's done just perfectly.
But it's able to do social commentary, though, without being too preachy or condescending.
Yeah, it's not like the Captain America TV show where they have him look directly at the camera and say like, "Hey, this is bad." It doesn't do that to you. It is slightly more subtle, and we'll talk about this a bit more when we get into it, but I do like how it approaches its satire and commentary.
Like, the first time I saw it, it went over my head, because, like, I was probably, like, 13 or 14 when I first saw it. When I first saw it, though, it was, like, a TV-edited version, so I didn't, like, see all the, like, gorier parts.
Yeah.
But because of the way it's made, this also feels like a real future that could exist. Hell, it kind of did exist. It's just the 80s. It's well directed. It has a good script. The cast is fantastic. Like, everybody feels like they were right for the part that they were cast in. And this also has probably my favorite death scenes in any movie we've done on the podcast.
There are some great deaths.
There's like 2 in particular I'm thinking of right now. Towards the end of the movie.
Yeah,
You never forget them once you've seen them.
Oh, they are very good.
It's a perfect combination of 80s action, sci-fi elements, violent crime drama, satire, dark humor. It's not just your typical generic sci-fi action movie. It has a lot of personality.
Yes.
Even the minor characters in this movie have personality. Like,
that they all feel like characters even if you don't really see much of them.
Yeah, exactly. And it also just goes to show we're probably not going to get a movie like this ever again.
No.
At least not from, like, a big studio.
Mm. It is another one of those movies that just feels so unique.
It does,
as you watch it. And you can tell that so many movies after it tried to copy what it did and just weren't able to.
Yeah, like the sequels. And a lot of the themes here are still relevant, even though this movie came out like 40 years ago.
And a lot of the satire is still very, very relevant.
And very funny, too.
Yes.
It's well-paced. It's a well-edited movie. I also... It's got, like, a perfect running time. It's, like, 103 minutes. It's not too slow, and it's not too fast, so... But yeah, we can get into the recapping now. So we start with the logo appearing. It just says RoboCop right there on the screen.
And then we move on.
Yeah, and then we move on. And then we get a bunch of just news reports and fake commercials.
And we'll get these throughout the movie, and I love the atmosphere that it adds to it, and it is also where a pretty big part of the whole satire and commentary of this movie come into play are these news reports.
They feel like real news reports too, which I like.
Yeah, and I think because all of the news reports I don't do the same thing, where they mention some sort of horrible tragedy that has taken place, like the deaths of innocents and like presidents, and it's a brief mention, and then the next thing is a whole news report on something that like OCP or another company is doing, and they just skip over the horrible tragedy to get to the corporations.
Well, that's what happens when the corporations are running the news, in the future. I also think the news reports also do a good job of setting up the villain.
Yes.
Clarence Boddicker, like, they're like saying he's like a cop killer. They're like really showing him to be a serious threat, and yeah, so and of course, who runs the police department in this movie?
It's Omni Consumer Products, OCP, just a big corporation which sounds like they're primarily an engineering company, but not much details given into what they do, except they want to build a city, and they have military and police contracts.
And, of course, they don't seem that concerned about the cops running into any risks while on the job. Or at least Dick Jones doesn't, because there's that part where he's talking on the TV. He says if you can't stand the heat, you better stay out of the kitchen. Then we're in the Detroit police station. That's another thing. This movie takes place in Detroit.
Yes.
This really isn't like a dystopian future. It's just Detroit.
It's just Detroit. Honestly, if this is what Detroit looks like, it sounds like they're all having a pretty good time up there.
Oh, Jesus. But yeah, they're in the Detroit, like, police station. There was one funny line that I liked where one of them says, attempted murder? It's not like he killed someone.
That's such a good one.
There's a lot of good lines in this. Like, of all the movies we've done on this podcast, this is definitely one of the ones I've quoted the most.
Yeah,
because
it's very quotable.
There's so many good lines in this. And there's also where we're introduced to two of our main characters, Alex Murphy.
Yep.
Played by Peter Weller.
A cop who has just been transferred to the main Detroit police station. And as he's going in, as he's like, getting to his locker, they pull out the name of a cop that was just killed and gave him that locker.
Yeah, and that was also the guy that was mentioned during the news report a few minutes ago. Good luck, Frank. Well, good job, dipshit. He's dead. But yeah. And that's also kind of foreshadowing what happens to him later in the movie.
Not even that much later. It's like 5 minutes later.
And that's also where we meet his partner, Ann Lewis. And one huge compliment I can give this movie is Peter Weller's performance.
Yes.
He is perfect as Alex Murphy and later as RoboCop. Especially as RoboCop.
He has a great voice for a robot.
That's a hard role to pull off, because you have to remember that body language that he's using to make it feel like he's moving in a robotic way. It's very convincing.
Yeah.
It helps that the sound effects are really good, too. And he's also very easy to sympathize with, too.
Yeah, because you see this guy, he's got a family, and they build him up as someone who's very invested with the family, because when he's talking to his new partner, he's doing the gun spinning thing. He's like, oh, it's something my son saw on TV, and he asks, basically, he's doing it to please his son.
Yeah. And he's just a good guy trying to do his job. And some people make things a little difficult for him by killing him and then bringing him back to life. So you can see why he's a little pissed off. And I also like how Murphy's first and last lines in this movie are him saying his name.
Oh, really?
Which I hadn't realized that until this viewing, but I thought that was a good way of, like, tying it up, you know? And it makes sense, too, for the arc his character goes through. And, yeah, there's a locker room that has both men and women in it. Apparently the future is very egalitarian. There's quite a bit of nudity there, too. Yeah. It's a locker room.
I don't think I really noticed that the first time. Maybe I'm just used to it because Aliens did the same thing.
It kind of does, yeah. A minor point, but I like the OCP logo.
Yes. How it's all like the letters are sort of encircling one another.
Yeah, it's a very distinct look, and also it looks like it could be an actual logo for a corporation. And speaking of OCP, let's talk about the Ed 209. So they're having a board meeting, and then they decide to test out the Ed 209, which is this
it's like a war robot, if we're being honest.
It's sort of like a walker robot from, like, Star Wars, now that I think about it. A little smaller, obviously, but...
And it's essentially a small tank with 2 chain guns on legs.
It's sort of like a police dog a little bit, except a robot.
Yeah.
They're planning on having a bunch of those around around Detroit, which good luck with that. And of course, they're going to test this thing out in during a board meeting.
I mean, where else would you do it?
What could go wrong? Dick Jones tells Mr. Kenny to point the gun at the Ed 209.
And then things go wrong.
Very, very much so.
So, Ed 209 tells him to drop the gun. You have 20 seconds to comply. So he drops the gun, but Ed 209 doesn't, like, recognize it. And so it opens fire. It fires on Mr. Kenny, just obliterating him in this conference room.
It is so fucking graphic, too. Like, it's just... he's getting shot so many times, and there is so much blood.
And then they call it paramedics as if that's gonna help anything.
And the Ed 209, is kind of... What I say is it's kind of like The Room. It's great because it's terrible. Because, not only does it kill an OCP employee early in the movie, but it also can't go down the fucking stairs, as we find out later on.
Yeah.
And I also like Dick Jones, after this horrifying, like, atrocity that just happened in front of them, he's talking to the old man, Dan O'Hurley's character.
I'm sure it's only a glitch. A temporary setback. You call this a glitch?
And then seeing an opportunity, Miguel Ferrer's character,
Bob Morton.
Yes.
Bob Morton.
Ends up pitching his own idea to the old man, which is the RoboCop project.
He just has it all ready. He was waiting for Dick Jones to screw up, I guess. And so that he could say, oh, I have this other program. Let's try that. Yeah. And Bob Morton, he's great.
I absolutely love his character in this. He is so fun.
He's one of my favorite characters in this movie. Because he's a sleazeball, but he's a more honest sleazeball than the other guys, at least.
Exactly.
Because, he does, like, make RoboCop and stuff, but he doesn't really show any remorse at all when the guy gets killed by the Ed 209.
Nope.
He just brushes it off by saying, oh, that's life in the big city. And then now he's using it as an opportunity to get his own products up and running. And then even after that, he never views RoboCop as a human. He's just a product to him.
Yep.
I also just love his, like, he does this, like, over-the-top clap during the board meeting.
He's very obviously trying to suck up to the old man.
Like, that's up there with, like, Orson Welles and Citizen Kane and Timothy Dalton and Hot Fuzz is, like, one of the best claps ever in movies. And it's also just funny. He's one of the only people that doesn't seem to find Dick Jones that intimidating.
Yeah.
Because everybody else is just terrified of this dude, which, I mean, to be fair,
yes,
he's a pretty ruthless dude. But he's, like, the one guy that, like, there's that scene, but this is jumping ahead a little bit, but there's that scene between them in the bathroom.
Yes, and as soon as Dick comes out of the stall, everybody else leaves the restroom except for Bob.
And then even though Dick Jones is, like, shouting in his face and pulling his hair, he still stays pretty calm the whole time.
Yeah.
But he's such a fun character, too. That's definitely one of the, like, that's another one of those performances that, you know, again, whenever I see a movie and I see that Miguel Ferrer is in the cast, this is why I'm so excited when I see him in the cast of something, because he's so good.
So something that I ended up reading, actually, the reason why David Lynch casted him in Twin Peaks is because he saw RoboCop and loved his performance in it.
I don't blame him. I mean, it's a great performance. That also confirms that David Lynch has seen RoboCop.
Yes, which is great.
Gosh, imagine if David Lynch had done this instead of Dune. Also, the sound effects are really good in this.
Yeah, the sound design overall is great.
I think
this is
won an Oscar for, like, best sound effects editing or something, which
it definitely deserves it.
Like, especially like the sound whenever RoboCop is, like, walking. That's a great sound right there.
Yes, I was just about to mention that. Like, all of RoboCop's movements have real weight behind them because of the sound effects.
Yeah, can you imagine, like, how different this movie would feel if the sound effects weren't in it?
Yeah.
It'd be a little bit strange. And also the sound effects in the Ed 209 are really good, too.
Yeah. They have, like, a leopard roar as part of it.
Yes. Another thing worth pointing out, too, is that this would have been one of the last mainstream movies that used stop motion effects.
Oh, really?
This and RoboCop 2, this would have been some of the last ones. At least done by a big studio. And they're pretty good stop motion effects, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit ropey at some points, but, you know, I mean, 30 years
it's
go
pretty
by,
good.
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially on the Ed 209. I think the effects on the Ed 209 looked really good. I also just like how dirty this movie is.
Yes, it definitely feels like Detroit as you watch it.
Detroit, yes. The city, it looks gritty. It looks used. You know, it looks like Detroit. Detroit with really good set design and matte paintings, basically. Like, at some points, it didn't even really look like an 80s movie. It felt more like something from the 70s.
Yeah.
Because it definitely is less, like... Because a lot of 80s movies have this, like, really, like, polished, like, neon look to them, whereas this is, like, very...
gritty and kind of down to earth on the street.
And a lot of this movie takes place at an old steel mill, too. Maybe that's why.
And a lot of the scenes take place at night, especially when, like, RoboCop's going around for parts of it. And I actually thought some of that looks a bit like Escape from New York, almost. with just how the city looks. Everything's dark, run down.
A little, yeah. A little bit.
There's less fire, but...
It's true. Well, there is fire, like when the gas station explodes.
Yes.
And yeah, soon after this, we're introduced to the villains, the other villains, including Clarence Boddicker.
Yes.
They're just driving around in a truck. They stole some money.
But they can't spend it because the guy burnt the money while blowing open the door.
I was watching this movie and I'm like, that's like this movie's equivalent of you are only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. Like, it's just...
I also like how Boddicker outlines their plan, basically, where he's like, we need the money so that we can buy Coke, so that we can sell the Coke in Detroit to make a profit.
Step 1, steal money. Step 2, buy Coke. Step 3, profit. And pretty soon they end up at I guess it was an abandoned warehouse or something.
Yeah, it's basically where they're making their headquarters.
Lewis gets distracted by a guy who's peeing.
And Murphy ends up attempting to confront the rest of the group, but he's blown to smithereens instead.
A lot of the violence in this movie is really over the top. Some of it's played for laughs, but this scene is actually genuinely distressing to watch.
It is. It's very gory. You basically see like body parts getting blown off.
That part where his hand gets blown off is especially
Yeah.
And they're just cackling like hyenas while doing this. Yeah, it's just... jeez. And then Boddicker, he's just standing over there in the corner. He just looks kind of bored.
Yeah.
It's like he's just killed so many people. He's just like, I'll just let these guys have the fun, basically. Before he fires the last shot, shoots him in the head, and kills him. But yeah, he gets shot up a lot in that scene.
He does. There's basically nothing left of him.
But apparently that's still enough to build him into a super robot. And there's also the point of the movie I was like thinking, come to think of it, the premise of this movie has some similarities to Darkman.
I kind of noticed that too. There's the like the abandoned warehouse is used as a pretty central location. Someone should have been dead, but due to some sort of extra circumstance, basically, they are kept alive, and then they use their reclaimed life to then fight crime and get revenge.
And John Landis has a cameo.
Yes, and John Landis is there.
And I love the build-up to RoboCop being created.
Yes.
They basically have him on... They, take him to the hospital, but he's dead, so... But then they're just slowly, showing... And they're showing it from his perspective, too.
And it's also pretty distressing, because you see all these people going around, and it's very clear that they don't actually care about saving his life. It's more about just, we need a subject to be RoboCop, essentially.
Yeah, like Bob Morton at one point, he's saying, lose the arm, just...
Yeah.
And it was an interesting choice, though, to showing it from his perspective, because you also see, the screen, too.
Yep, when they're installing, the cameras into his eyes, essentially. Something that I noticed that I actually really liked, so when they were about to kind of show him off, when they first activated him and let him walk around, they don't show you what he actually looks like for a while, but there's a mirror in the corner of the frame that shows you a glimpse of his face as he walks past.
Yeah, it's a kind of a slow build up until you finally get the reveal.
Yeah.
And then you do get to see him, and the costume is great.
It looks fantastic.
It looks like an actual, it looks like actual metal. It looks very robotic. It's very well designed. It's a very memorable design, too.
And again, paired with the sound effects, it looks and feels like it has actual weight to it.
Does, yeah. I also like how he like pulls the gun out of his leg. He can when he holsters it, he spins it around, puts it away.
Yeah.
Kind of like what Murphy was doing at the beginning. So it's sort of a signal of, maybe he still has some of his humanity left in there.
Yeah.
And this is also where we learn about the prime directives. He has 4 prime directives. One of them's classified, and we don't learn it until later in the movie.
Yep.
But the 3 that we're told about here are serve the public trust, protect the innocent, uphold the law.
Yep.
Which, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. That sounds reasonable. You know?
Yeah.
I just love Bob Morton's reactions here, too. You know,
like, you can tell he's genuinely proud that this thing has actually come to fruition.
Yeah, exactly. I love the part where he says,
I fucking love that guy!
But again, he doesn't view RoboCop as a human. He's just a product, you know. It's just a way for him to get ahead in the company, you know. So Bob Morton's kind of an anti-hero in this movie, I guess. Anti-villain, I don't know.
I think anti-villain would probably be closer.
Probably, because he's not really a good person. We just like him because he's funny, basically. The line, I fucking love that guy. I mean, that doesn't really sound like it would be a great line, like, on paper, but he delivers it perfectly.
Yeah.
You know? I also like how RoboCop has this transmitter embedded in his middle finger, and it's really sharp. And yes, it does come into play later in the movie. He's not a major character, but Johnson is great.
Oh, is he the one, like, assistant? Or,
yes.
Like, one of the scientists? Yeah, he's funny.
He's like one of the few guys at OCP that actually seems to be enjoying his job.
I know, because there's the scene where, like, somebody asks, like, how does he eat? And they're like, well, he has, like, this paste that's produced. And he goes up and he just gets a cup of it and starts eating it.
He says, tastes like baby food. And then Bob Morton says, knock yourself out. It's so funny, yeah. And at the end, when Dick Jones, like, falls out the window, he, like, gives a thumbs up to RoboCop. He's just... you see what I meant? Like, with even the minor characters in this movie, they have personality.
They have a lot of personality.
And RoboCop goes to do target practice.
And he's, like, firing like a madman, and all the shots are hitting the chest and the head.
Yeah. And just destroying the targets, too. Like, and the other cops, they're, like, just so fascinated. They're, like, all watching him, just going, what the fuck is going on over here? And then RoboCop, he goes out to stop crime for the first time.
I like how they just let him drive.
Yeah.
Like, they don't give him any supervision. They've never tested to see if he can drive. They're just like, yeah, sure, we'll let him drive.
They'll just let him drive, yeah, exactly.
And the fact that he actually fits in the cop car is pretty impressive.
Apparently, the actual costume couldn't. At least, like, the bottom part of it. Like, apparently, he couldn't put on, like, the legs of the costume to get. So, the shots of RoboCop in the car, Peter Weller was actually just sitting there, like, in his underwear with the top part of the RoboCop costume on. Because, you would think, I wonder if RoboCop would actually be able to fit in the car. Probably not. And the shots of him driving in the car with his theme song playing, it's just awesome. It's so good.
And so then we get to RoboCop's first crime that he stops.
Oh, this is also the first time you hear, I'd buy that for $1.
You hear it like 3 or 4 times throughout the movie.
It's like just this terrible sitcom that everybody watches for some reason. I don't.
And they all love it too. Like towards the end of the movie, someone breaks open a window so they can turn the volume up, and they're just dying laughing at that line.
Yeah, maybe if we saw like the rest of it and got context, or maybe that's just another instance of like how much Detroit has decayed. Is just the only show. Is that the only show people are watching? Or is just that one?
I like the idea that this is only happening in Detroit and the rest of the country is just normal. But it's just Detroit is such a bad place that all of this is happening.
That's kind of just what Detroit is like, right? I mean, it's like a dystopian nightmare, but everywhere else is fine, right? We made so many jokes about Detroit in this. But yeah, he goes to... There's a guy robbing a convenience store. And I like how he's like asking where the safe is, and they say they don't have a safe, but then he just knocks over
a bunch of beer cans and finds it immediately.
Yeah, he just knew where it was instantly. That's pretty good. And another sound effect I really like is whenever like a door is opened by RoboCop.
Oh yeah,
It sounds really cool. It sounds sort of like some like sound effect from like Star Wars or something.
Yeah, a little bit.
And yeah, the guy turns around, he sees RoboCop, he just starts shooting his machine gun, just saying "fuck me" over and over again.
I mean, to be fair, what do you do when you're committing a crime and something that looks like RoboCop comes through the door?
That's a very good point.
And no one's ever heard of him before because he's brand new. Like, what do you do?
He's stopping his first crime, yeah. And I also just love, like, they basically wreck this store.
Yeah. It's obliterated, essentially.
RoboCop, like, throws the guy into, like, some milk. It's like...
Yeah, like the fridges.
Fridges, yeah, thank you. He just wrecked, like... And also the guy was firing a bunch of bullets, so, like, tons of stuff is just destroyed. They just wrecked the store, and then RoboCop, he's, like, so polite, too. He says...
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
And he thanks people a lot in this movie.
I know. He just, like, the most, like, violent shit, and then just goes, thank you for your cooperation.
Because he's just doing his job, you know? He's got robbers and rapists to stop, you know? And I was realizing RoboCop, he doesn't say, like, he doesn't talk that much in this movie, but almost every line he says is memorable.
Yes. So he's off to solve his next crime, which are these two men are attempting to molest a woman.
Yeah, the best attempted rape we've had on the podcast so far. Jesus, why does this always happen?
What is our count at this point? 7,
I don't know.
8?
I don't know. But this scene's pretty good, though, because then they're trying to rape this woman. Then RoboCop shows up. And then RoboCop shows up. I also like the lighting during this scene, how you, like, see his shadow. And he basically he pulls out his gun. He doesn't want to shoot the woman, so he just shoots one of the rapists in the crotch.
He follows it up with a great line, too.
Your move, creep.
I like how OCP decided to program in shit talking into RoboCop. They felt it was that necessary for him to say something like "your move, creep" after shooting a guy's junk off.
And the poor woman, she's like really grateful that he, stopped him. She just goes up to him and hugs him, says thank you, and he just it's very in like a monotone voice. RoboCop just says, "I'm going to alert like a rape crisis center."
Yeah, and then leaves to go solve another crime.
Yeah, it's just that's just RoboCop's day, you know.
And I love this third crime. It is so strange.
And yeah, the next crime, he goes to stop this guy named Miller who's holding up City Hall.
Because I think he was, like, previously the mayor, but he lost the election. And so he went in with a gun and he's holding up, like, the new office. And he's making all these demands, like, he wants his old job back, he wants a bigger office, and he wants a new car.
I love what he says about the car. He's like, they ask him, like, what kind of car he wants. He says a car that goes really fast and gets really shitty gas mileage. More great satire right there. And then RoboCop shows up. And he, like, uses his thermal vision to see through the wall. He, like, pulls the guy through the wall and then punches him out the window.
RoboCop would be a great horror movie villain.
We already do have RoboCop as a horror movie villain. The Terminator.
Fair. I thought you were going to say, like, Mall Cop or something like that. Or...
Mall Cop.
Not Mall
I would
Cop.
love to see the version of Mall Cop, but with RoboCop.
I forget what I was thinking of. The one it's like a mall and it's patrolled by, like, a robot security guard.
Oh, Chopping Mall?
Chopping Mall, yes.
It would be Chopping Mall mixed with Paul Blart Mall Cop then, I guess. God. And then now they're showing news reports of RoboCop asking, like, who is he? What is he? And this is also kind of like The Incredibles now that I think about it.
Yeah, a little bit. Is this where we get my favorite commercial?
Right after this, but I wanted to mention a line from RoboCop. Like, RoboCop's just hanging out with a bunch of kids. They're, like, playing on him.
Excuse me, Robo. Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
Stay out of trouble.
I fucking love that line so much. And yes, next after this is
So they have an advertisement for a board game called Nukem.
I love this scene so much.
And there's so many good. There's something like 5 lines in the whole commercial, but they're all great.
You crossed my line of death.
You haven't dismantled your MX stockpile.
Pakistan's threatening my border.
That's it, Buster. No more military aid. And then, like, a really shitty explosion is layered over it.
Nuke 'em.
And then it's revealed
Get them
to be...
before they get you. It's like a board game. Yeah, it's so funny.
And I would 100% buy this board game.
I was kind of imagining, like, it's like a parody of, like, maybe Risk or stuff like that. Battleship.
Yeah, it's like a...
Battleship, maybe.
I just love that Pakistan is threatening my border.
That line is so funny. Oh, that's Dr. Strangelove's favorite board game right there. Dick Jones. Let's talk about Dick Jones for a bit.
Yep.
He is a great villain in this. You might remember we were doing the podcast on Darkman. You might remember that also had a greedy businessman character named Strack.
Who was also involved with building a new city.
And Strack is basically the not as good version of Dick Jones.
He's the diet version of Dick.
Yeah, because Dick Jones, he's like ruthless and genuinely intimidating.
Yeah.
You know? But at the same time, there's like little moments where you can... This guy seems to be taking some sadistic glee out of what he's doing. Like that message he has to Bob Morton later in the movie. That part's really great. And when characters are like saying stuff like he'll make sushi out of you, you believe it. I mean, Jesus Christ. You know. And RoboCop, he keeps having these flashbacks to his family.
Yeah, it starts off as flashbacks to when he got killed.
Yeah.
And he's like kind of convulsing in the chair, which looks super weird and kind of janky. But because I know I've seen that used as like reaction images before.
Yeah. I think I like looked at like I looked up like RoboCop gifs at one point. I think the first one that showed up was that, actually, if I remember right. But it's some pretty good physical acting by Peter Weller right there too. Like,
Yeah.
basically, he's just having these like visions, and it like wakes him up. He kind of goes rogue a little bit. He just starts walking away, and all the OCP people are just kind of freaking out.
Because they don't know how to stop him.
You built him. Don't you have like a chip or something that you could put in him and stop him? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, while he's walking away, he runs into Ann Lewis, who recognizes him.
And it does end up stopping him for a little bit, but he ends up leaving to go and try and find the criminals that killed him when he was still Murphy.
Yeah, and I like the line he has before he leaves, where he says,
Excuse me. I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
That's a pretty good one, too.
I just love Peter Weller's like monotone delivery of these lines. It's
And they also add like a layer underneath it to make it sound a little bit more robotic, which works very well.
yeah, and also just the line. There's something just kind of funny about the phrasing too.
Yeah.
Somewhere there is a crime happening. I should just say that whenever I like leave a room to go somewhere. I should just say, "Excuse me, I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
There is a crime happening.
I have to go now. My planet needs me." Another great villain. We have to talk about Boddicker.
Yes.
He is definitely. Oh man, it's hard to choose. I think he's my favorite villain in the movie.
He is very good.
When Murphy calls him slime, I'm like, yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Because Clarence Boddicker, he is such a nasty piece of work. I love how just unrepentantly disgusting he is.
So he acts like a hitman later in the movie. He's planning on he robs a bank so that he can use the money to buy cocaine that he can sell to make more money.
Well, it's not just that, but he has terrible manners. There's two parts where he spits blood.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Once in RoboCop's face, and the other on a form in the police station. At one point, he puts his fingers in a dude's wine glass and sniffs it.
I forgot about that.
Which I'm like, why did you do that? And there's another, he takes out his gum and puts it on a woman's desk. Like, just... It's not even just like he's a dude that like murders a bunch of people. He's also just super like impolite to everybody, basically. He seems to just enjoy being a scumbag.
And there's one part later on where one of his subordinates rolls up in a nice car, and the first thing he does is blow it up.
Yeah, he blows up the car. It's
because
like
he doesn't want him to have a nicer car than him.
Yeah. It's like a brand new car, too, if I remember right.
Yeah, well, it's the same car that the mayor asked for as part of his demands.
The 6000 SUX. Very subtle name right there. And he also just doesn't like Dick Jones.
No.
It's like he only accepted the job from him because he loves the money and the drugs.
Yeah.
And sometimes he likes hurting people. You know, it's just...
He's just unapologetically a villain.
And it's such a great performance too. Like, because this is a character who could very easily be super caricaturish, but Kurtwood Smith really makes him feel like he could be a real person,
Yes.
like a person in the real world. And even during scenes where he doesn't say much, like that scene where he confronts Bob Morton, that's a little bit later, but he doesn't even say much during that scene, but he's super intimidating.
Yes.
Like, he feels like an actual threat. He's not even, like, that tall or that built of a dude either, but, like, just... But he definitely leaves an impression on you. I guess everybody's just scared of him just because he's so intense. You know, just like you make one slight mess up and he'll just...
And that's it for you.
Yep. Game over, man. Game over. Another great scene. I feel like that's what this is like. It's just listing off what's the next great scene in this movie.
Because they're all so good.
Like, every scene feels like it needs to be there, and every scene, there's something in the scene that's just...
so memorable that makes it fantastic.
Exactly, yeah. It's a perfectly paced movie, too. Like, it does not feel boring, ever. The one of the bad guys from the beginning, he goes to rob a gas station. And even the guy running the gas station gets a little bit of personality. Apparently he's just a poor college student working on his geometry homework.
And so he gets held up by this scummy motorcycle driver who works for Boddicker.
Yep. I'm remembering, whenever I think about this character, all I think about is the way he dies later in the movie. We'll get to that. And then RoboCop shows up.
Yeah.
He says his catchphrase.
He drops the greatest line.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
And immediately he recognizes him as Alex Murphy and starts freaking out.
I know you. You're dead. We killed you.
And RoboCop's just like, he's kind of just stops in his tracks and he's like playing this clip over and over in his head. He's like, wait, I'm dead? You know, because that's quite a big revelation right there. Like, I woke up to this? Jesus Christ. It's only my second day on the job. And there's just this huge gas station explosion, which RoboCop survives, I should point out.
Yeah. Perfectly unscathed.
Yeah. And it's a good-looking explosion, too. It's an actual explosion, you know. Did it in one take. It was a pretty good take, you know. Looks pretty good. But yeah, this experience causes RoboCop to basically try to figure out who he is. Kind of like in Total Recall. He's like, who the hell am I? You know, but yeah. He like takes out his transmitter, the really sharp middle finger transmitter. Like, puts it in a computer, basically figures out the name of all the criminals, and finds out they killed a cop named Alex Murphy.
And so he goes to Murphy's house to try and investigate Murphy and see what's the connection.
And yeah, he goes to his home. His family basically moved out, and there's just stuff covering all his furniture, and he's just looking around. I love this scene right here.
Yes.
Because he's visiting his old home, having flashbacks, and it really humanizes him, you know. That's really what the movie's about, is just he's like, even though they made him into a machine, he still has bits of his humanity left.
Yeah, and that is shown very well in this scene, because as he goes through the house, it's almost like Murphy's memories are replaying as he gets to each room.
And it's so sad, too, because you realize, like, what this dude lost. Like, his death was brutal, like, for a reason. It was really to show, like, the tragedy of the whole situation. And then right before he leaves the house, I like how he just punches the TV. Dude, that's pretty good. It's a sad scene, but hey, you know, let's add in a little bit of levity, you know.
Mm.
Yeah, poor RoboCop. The dude, he just wanted to see his family, but a bunch of fucking jerks made that impossible now. And then he goes to a dance club where he finds Leland Palmer. I mean, Leon Nash. This is a pretty good scene here.
Yeah. So Nash tries to fight RoboCop one-on-one.
Very
with his
stupid
fists.
idea on his part.
And he like breaks his foot trying to kick him. It's great.
It kind of reminds me of this scene from The Jerk, the Steve Martin movie, where he like kicks a dude in the crotch, and he later finds out the dude is named Iron Balls McGinty. So he injured his foot really bad. But yeah, why would you kick RoboCop in the crotch? That's such a terrible idea. I like how he grabs Nash by the hair and says, "Let's talk," and just drags him out of the club. It's so funny. And this is the scene where the director, Paul Verhoeven, has a cameo.
Oh, okay.
But it goes by so quickly that you never even notice. Like, I literally had to, like, look up, okay, who is he during this scene? And I'm like, okay. And another great scene, Bob Morton's at his house, his mansion.
With two models doing cocaine.
He's just snorting cocaine off of them. And then Clarence Boddicker shows up. And then Boddicker's only line during this scene is, "Bitches leave." And both of the women just run away, and like one of them says, "Are you gonna call me?" Even though Clarence Boddicker's like holding a gun up to Bob Morton. Oh, it's so funny. And then he gets shot in the legs by Boddicker, who he puts in like this is a computer disc. He like puts a disc in, and like it shows a message from his good pal Dick Jones,
who basically made this whole thing to gloat about how he's about to be killed.
It's pretty good, yeah. And then like I like Bob Morton's line to Clarence Boddicker. He like says to him that he'll pay him double what Jones is paying him.
Yeah.
Apparently that's not enough, though. Because Boddicker, like, pulls out this grenade, like, pulls out the pin. It's like a timed grenade, though, so it doesn't go off, like...
Yeah. It has like a clock, like an LCD watch clock on it.
And something I hadn't realized until watching this again, there's like I think there's a Casablanca reference during this scene.
Really?
Because Dick Jones at one point says, "It's an old story, a fight for love and glory," which is a paraphrase of lyrics to the song As Time Goes By, which was in the movie Casablanca.
Huh.
And yeah, Bob Morton gets blown up.
Which, that made me sad. I love Bob so much.
He's such a great character, yeah. But to be fair, I mean, it's his own fault he got into that stupid mess. I mean, what do you think was going to happen if he messed with Dick Jones? Another great scene. That's basically this podcast. Just here's another great scene. Boddicker's at the drug warehouse, he's trying to do a business deal.
And this is the scene where he puts his fingers under the wine glass, right?
Yeah, yes, it is. And it's also where he says, like,
"I got the muscle to shove enough of this factory so far up your stupid wop ass that you'll shit snow for a year."
And then RoboCop shows up.
Yes. Oh, and
And
another
we get-
thing, like right after he sticks his fingers in the wine glass, the dude drinks out of it too. And yeah, and then RoboCop shows up. He says another one of his iconic lines:
Come quietly or there will be trouble.
And he basically just wrecks the entire place trying to get to Clarence.
He's just killing all these dudes. It sort of feels like he's like gunslinger during this part.
Yeah.
Which makes sense the way he like pulls out his gun instead of like spins it. That's based on like a Western like TV show someone's watching. But yeah, it's a pretty great scene. And then he finally gets to he's like killed all the other guys. He gets to Clarence Boddicker. He's just beating the shit out of this dude. Like his face is so covered in blood, and like he's even like spitting blood. I like the part where RoboCop like picks him up. He says, "Clarence Boddicker, you are under arrest." And then Boddicker says, "Fuck you," and then spits blood in his face. He's like choking him, but like Boddicker's like pleading for his life. He's saying, "I work for Dick Jones," which he doesn't know that RoboCop is recording him, but this comes back to bite him in the ass later. He's like trying to persuade RoboCop not to kill him, basically. He's like choking him, and like...
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this is the dude who killed him. I mean...
But ultimately, RoboCop goes back to his prime directives, which includes uphold the law.
Clarence Boddicker got off easy that point. If Murphy wasn't a robot, he would be dead right there.
Yes. 1000%.
And then, of course, now he knows that Dick Jones is behind this, so RoboCop goes to find Dick Jones, but he can't arrest him because of Directive 4.
Where he's not allowed to harm or do anything really to the senior members of OCP.
But also, that basically means OCP is above the law.
Yes.
And they also run the law. That is like the most horrifying scenario right there. And Peter Weller's physical acting here is great, too, because it's like shutting him down. He looks like he's in pain when he's shutting down. And Dick Jones, again, he's just gloating. He releases the Ed 209 to attack RoboCop. He says, I had to kill Bob Morton because he made a mistake. Now it's time to erase that mistake, which, again... comes back to bite him in the ass later in the movie. The fight between RoboCop and the Ed 209 is pretty good, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Really good stop motion effects, but then that's the part where the Ed 209 can't go down the stairs.
Yeah, RoboCop wins because he can walk down the stairs.
Yeah, and remember, this is this was the prototype that Dick Jones wanted guarding the streets. Just remember that. They can't even walk down the fucking stairs. Maybe that's why they had to test him out in the boardroom. That's the only place they could get him into.
They had an elevator that went up there.
Yeah. And it's just letting out like these like screams while it's just banging around. It's like it's so fucking funny. It's another instance where, there's parts of the movie that are really intense, but at the same time, it's not taking itself too seriously.
No.
And I like that, If you're gonna do something like this, you might as well have fun with it, RoboCop, he ends up getting out. Buddy gets attacked by the police.
Mm.
They've just all turned on him. I guess just because he tried to arrest Dick Jones, the number 2 guy. But he gets saved by Ann Lewis, which that's another thing I like. I like that Ann Lewis, she's one of the only ones that's still loyal to RoboCop.
Yes, that still treats him more like a human rather than a machine.
And then we get one of the other ads. This one's also pretty funny. It's this ad. Well, I think when I first saw this movie, I was like, "Wait a minute, what the hell is this?" Because there's like this fake dinosaur, this really fake-looking dinosaur wandering around city streets, just scaring people, and then it turns out it's a car commercial for these 6,000 SUX, and that's where the John Landis cameo is, by the way.
Oh, okay.
And then the police go on strike.
Which basically means all of these criminals just get to run. Oh, hold on. I just skipped over something that I didn't want to skip over.
Okay.
So So at the beginning, we kind of talked a bit about how the news stories typically will have some sort of horrifying event happen that they'll brush over and move on to something else.
Part. Yep, I remember.
So they start off by talking about the story. It's essentially the Star Wars defense system malfunctioned.
Blatant reference to the fucking, because there was the Star Wars like missile program. Yeah, they were trying to do in the 80s. So yeah,
and it like accidentally launched at this area with a bunch of old retirees, including 2 U.S. presidents that were killed by it.
What presidents do you want to guess were killed by it?
Oh, I don't know. What year did this take place again?
Oh fuck. I don't think they say what year it takes place in.
I think it's pretty safe to say that it would be like, let's say like late 80s. It's probably, okay, so it could have been Reagan. Never
Reagan,
mind.
and that's another
He would have
thing.
been
The
in
Star
office.
Wars, the Star Wars missile program was his idea too.
That's right. So he would have made it, been in office, and so it would have killed some former ones. It could have been Nixon.
I was gonna guess Nixon would have been one of them.
It could have been Nixon and Johnson, or Nixon and Ford. No, Johnson died by then, so yeah.
Ford, they could have been Ford, yeah. Or Carter.
Yeah, it looks like those are the
maybe
best.
Jimmy Carter.
Yeah, because there's only 3 options: Nixon, Ford, and Carter.
And Reagan.
Wow,
Ronald
Carter's
Reagan
old.
killed by his own missile program. Jesus Christ. That's so... But yeah, they like... That part, I was laughing pretty hard during that because I forgot, like, just how, like... They treat, like, the news stories, like, so seriously, and just, it's so...
And they drop that, they talk about it for 10 seconds, and then they move on to the police strike happening.
It's such a horrifying scenario. Again, that feels like something that'd be in, like, Doctor Strangelove. You know?
Yeah.
It just made me think of, like, that part where George C. Scott's, like, saying, you know, we could either have a situation where 20 million people are killed or 100 million people are killed. You know, something like... Jesus Christ. Nixon. Fucking tricky dick. And then the villain in this movie is named Dick Jones, too. So
Yeah.
that would be funny. Were you gonna say anything else?
I was just about to move on then to...
The news stories
just...
are also talking about how, like, they interview a few people on the streets, you know, just like...
They're supposed to be civil servants. They shouldn't be allowed to strike.
And then there's this other guy who's like... I don't know who the fuck this dude is, but he's like saying, yeah, man, like, like, clearly he's supposed to be this more anti-establishment dude. I don't know, like, he's like saying they should be allowed to go on strike if they want to, you know, stuff like that. Next I was going to talk about Dick Jones talking to Clarence Boddicker.
Okay.
And this is, I realized, this is the only scene where the 2 main villains talk to each other.
That's a good point.
And it's fucking great. It's so good.
Take a look at my face, Dick. He was trying to kill me.
He's a cyborg, you idiot.
I just love that exchange right there. That makes me laugh so much.
And basically Dick's telling him, you have to go hunt down and kill RoboCop or else he's going to be a problem for both of us.
He's basically ordering, yeah. Because he has the incriminating evidence, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Chief. Your company built the fucking thing. Now I gotta deal with it? I don't have time for this bullshit.
And he offers him basically the run of the entire like drug and gambling industry in Delta City.
And he persuades Boddicker to like keep working with him because once Delta City is built, Clarence will basically be the crime boss there.
Yeah. And I like it when Dick tells him that, because then Boddicker calls him Richard at the end of that scene instead.
I was gonna mention that, yeah, because during the whole, he kept calling him Dick, and then they're back. Once they're back on good terms again, he just calls him Richard. Yeah, that's pretty funny. There's also a part before that when he's like, right before he talks to Jones, he tries hitting on this secretary.
Oh yeah.
God, that part is just. But apparently, that's Kurtwood Smith's actual wife.
Really?
Which makes that scene even funnier. Because he's just so gross and it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
He like sticks the gum on her desk and like. And Dick Jones gives him like the tracking signal to like track RoboCop. And Boddicker says, "You got access to military weaponry?" Jones says, "We practically are the military." That's another very horrifying scenario right there. Again, just like Detroit. Jesus Christ. It's a good thing this doesn't happen in real life, you know? It's never happened in real life, has it?
Never. It's impossible. It could never be.
That is one thing I do like about this movie. This actually does feel like a future that could realistically exist, because it has, in some ways.
Because the only thing that's really separating us from that is the fact that we don't actually have RoboCop walking around.
Yeah, exactly. So in a way, our world is slightly worse than theirs. And speaking of RoboCop, he's hiding out with Lewis in an abandoned steel mill. And he takes off his mask.
And I think this looks really good. Like, his
does.
costume without it. Because it really looks like they just took his face and put it over the machine.
It does, yeah. It's very good effects right there. And this is another really sad moment here, too. Because he's, like, asking about his family, and Lewis saying, like, they, like, moved away because they thought he was dead. And again, it shows that Murphy, he is part machine, but he still has his humanity left.
Yeah.
And I like that he has his mask off for the rest of the movie, too.
Yeah.
Because it's like it's some nice symbolism, you know?
Yeah, it's him basically trying to accept and return to being more human and less machine.
Yep. Which is, again, another thing that made the sequels disappointing, but yeah. Meanwhile, the city is getting ransacked.
And we get the other "I'd buy that for $1" scene.
Yeah, Emil, like, breaks open the window of a store so he can hear the TV. Why would you do... It's such a terrible show. Why would you do that?
Well, he doesn't just... He breaks it open using a whiskey bottle he was drinking from.
Yeah. He turns up the volume. But, like, yeah, the police, they aren't working, so all the criminals are just going crazy because they broke out of jail.
And so Boddicker meets up with his men and gives them all of these, essentially, cannons that they get to wield.
And the one guy stole the 6000 SUX, which Boddicker then destroys with one of the cannons. And they're just all, like, testing out, like, these guns, you know. I like Emil's one line here. I like it! The way he says that. Another one of those lines that, you know, on paper, you're just like, okay, whatever. But the delivery, it's just...
Yeah, no, the delivery sells it.
So they basically go off to find RoboCop.
And we get one of the greatest battle scenes in the movie.
Yep. And I think out of all the death scenes we've had on this podcast, the part where Emil gets covered in toxic waste,
and he's just melting. It's so gross.
it looks really good too, like, because his skin is like just, it's like,
Yeah,
it looks like it's coming off, just like,
it's like melting off him, and he's like running around screaming for someone to help.
his moan is like, it's so disturbing, but it's also kind of funny at the same time too. It's how over the top it is. And he like runs up to Leland Palmer and like tries like grabbing him, saying "Help me!" And then Leland Palmer says, "Don't touch me, man." It's so just, and not only that, the dude gets covered in toxic waste. Then he gets run over by Boddicker's car and explodes. Like there's so much blood during that. Like you see his head come off and like just, oh my goodness. And Boddicker's reaction to that was funny too. He basically reacts to it like if a bug landed on his windshield.
And this eventually leads to a standoff between RoboCop and Boddicker in a junkyard.
And Lewis and Leland Palmer. I like how we keep calling him Leland Palmer.
I know.
I do know the actual character's name, Leon Nash, but I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just more funny. It's funnier to imagine that this is just Leland Palmer, and he's in RoboCop.
This is what he did before Laura was born.
Except he died, though, in this movie, so this would have had to have been like... Wait, oh God, Twin Peaks is so confusing, though. I don't know if would this be...
Maybe it was Leland's brother.
Leland's brother, yeah. Leon Palmer. And yeah, and speaking of Leland Palmer, he gets blown up by Lewis.
And
he dumps some like metal on top of RoboCop with like a crane.
And actually, right before this, I love the interaction between RoboCop and Clarence Boddicker. Because it's great, because RoboCop has decided that he's not going to spare him, which Boddicker was not expecting. He throws down his gun and he's like, "Okay, I surrender." And then RoboCop's like, "I'm not going to arrest you," and he starts freaking out a little bit.
That's a great line, yeah. Like, the only person that can scare Clarence Boddicker is apparently RoboCop. I mean, because, to be fair, he thought he killed this dude earlier in the movie, and now he's just back. And he's also, like, practically invincible, because he's got all the robot parts. I'd be running scared, too, if I were him. And also, like, he's, like, trying to stab RoboCop with this, like, pipe or something.
Yeah.
He like says, "Sayonara, RoboCop." But then RoboCop pulls out his transmitter, the really sharp transmitter, which is basically Chekhov's gun in this movie. And he stabs him in the neck with it.
Yeah.
And it's so much blood comes out. Like, it gets on, like, RoboCop's, like, armor, and there's, like, blood spraying out of Boddicker's neck. It's so good. It's such a brutal, just great death for such a disgusting villain. And yeah, that's the end of Clarence Boddicker. More villains should die like that. I mean,
know.
It's just, that felt so satisfying when that happened.
And so RoboCop shows back up to OCP in order to try to get Dick. And I love this part when he drives up and he parks, and there's an Ed 209 just outside, and it goes, "You are illegally parked on the private property. You have 20 seconds to move your vehicle." Because this implies that OCP decided the best way to deal with illegal parking is to just obliterate them.
That seems to be their solution for everything, is just,
Just after one of their own board members was essentially assassinated during a meeting by the same thing.
definitely a Dick Jones idea. Which another thing is, Dick Jones, he wants Ed 209s all over the city. Which is a horrible idea for so many reasons. A fucking lawnmower could do better police work than the Ed 209. And this is a great scene right here. Because RoboCop just goes into the board meeting and he can't arrest Dick Jones because
he's a board member of OCP.
So he pulls out the recording he has of Dick Jones saying that he killed Bob Morton. And everybody's shocked, even Dick Jones is shocked. But of course, because he's panicking, he's like, oh, what's the best solution? I'm gonna hold a gun up to the CEO of the company I work for. He holds a gun up to the old man, tries taking him hostage, and then
Anybody tries to stop me? The old geezer gets it. Dick, you're fired!
Thank you.
Which takes off the directive force so that RoboCop is able to deal with Dick.
Yep, the fourth directive doesn't matter now. And then
Yep.
RoboCop says thank you and just kills him right in front of this board meeting. There's so many people there and he just shoots him several times.
And he falls out the window, and the effect is weird because he has arms that are twice the length of his body.
Yeah, some of the effects here didn't age well, I'll be honest. It goes by so quick though that I'll let it slide. It looks better than the Joker falling in Batman, which came out 2 years after this. But yeah, he just shot the dude right in front of all these people. I mean, he is Dick Jones, but still, And then Johnson, he gives a thumbs up right after this dude got murdered in front of them and fell out a window.
And so the old man turns to RoboCop and he's like,
Nice shooting, son. What's your name? Murphy.
That's one of my favorite final lines in film.
and then the movie just ends.
Yeah, you see Murphy smile, showing that he has his humanity still intact. And yeah, it just ends. The credits just start playing. Perfect. I love that.
Ugh.
That's just a perfect way to end the movie right there.
It really is. Because because it's finished, it's plot, and it's all right, we had a good time, we're done now, and then it just stops.
They could have just left things there, but they didn't, so. But yeah. Because, he went through his whole character arc there. That's. Seems pretty finished to me. Yeah. And it was nice doing a movie on this podcast with an easy to follow plot, too.
I know. It feels like it's been a while.
I know what happened in this movie. Partly because I've seen it so many times, but also just because it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
You're not really confused during any of it. You know what everybody's motivation is.
Yeah.
It's certainly more so that you're watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, where you're just wait, what's happening? What's going on?
Yeah, you have to pull out a notebook and make a chart.
So overall thoughts.
It's fantastic.
That's all you really need. You could just say, I like it. Or something like that.
I'd buy that for an hour.
Or that, yeah, that's an obvious one too. And again, if it isn't obvious, like I said before, this is one of my favorite movies. If I was making a list of my favorite movies,
yeah,
this would be in the top 10 somewhere. It'd be somewhere in the top 10. It's probably my third favorite movie we've done on the podcast.
Really?
I love this movie, man. It's because it's a great action movie. It's a great science fiction movie. It's funny without overdoing it. It has a great cast, a great setting, lots of great dialogue. It's well paced.
Yeah.
There aren't really any like huge issues I have with the movie. At least not anything that like really stands out. Because again, they're just like, okay, maybe a few special effects. They're like, okay, that's a bit dated.
Yeah, but like all the performances are great. The sound editing is great.
Yeah. The music. Yeah,
Yes.
The music's great.
And it is a very memorable movie overall.
It is, yeah. And it's also a very smart movie without being condescending.
Yes.
Like every time, because again, I've seen this movie several times. I actually watched this movie back in December.
Oh, okay.
And I'd seen it many times before that. But I was like thinking, could I do this podcast without watching it again? But I'm like, fuck it. I love this movie. I want to watch it again.
Yeah.
Because every time I watch it, it's an immensely enjoyable experience,
I probably am going to watch this again sometime soon with my brother. Because, like, this was just a fantastic experience. And I do want to see what it's like for somebody else's first time watching this movie.
That would be interesting, yeah. Seeing how other people react. And the movie, it's less than 2 hours. The pacing is very quick. It's never boring.
I just realized this is the second movie I've watched in the past week that takes place in Detroit.
What was the other one?
Barbarian. It'd be a very different movie with RoboCop in it.
Yeah, a lot of movies would be. I remember when we were doing the First Blood podcast, I made a joke saying, like, imagining, like, a crossover between RoboCop and First Blood, where, like, it's RoboCop tracking Rambo, which, honestly, I would totally watch that movie. Like, if that existed, I would love that.
Yeah.
And again, this movie, it shows how you should do social commentary.
Yeah, it's not beating you over the head with it. They don't have someone giving a grand monologue at the end explaining the purpose.
It's just, it's there, it exists, it feels organic in the movie.
Yes, it actually feels like you're looking into this world, and it's not like someone wrote it in at the last second in the margins of the script.
Exactly, yeah. Like, everything feels like it belongs in this movie.
Yes.
Like, all the characters feel like they should be there. All the, like, the setting just... It's also a very original movie.
Yes.
Like, it has its own unique look and feel to it. Like, watching it, you would think it was based on, like, some comic book or graphic novel, but no, this was, like, a new idea.
It does kind of have that comic booky feel to it.
They even compare RoboCop to, like, a comic book character during one of the news reports, too, so yeah. Yeah, it was a new idea, and then it was ripped off a bunch of times. Which that's another thing that makes me appreciate this movie even more, is just... You watch, like, some of the stuff that tried ripping this off, and this movie just did the concept so much better.
Yeah.
Like, you watch, like, Rotor and shit like that, and you're just like, oh. Like, Jesus, it could have... This movie could have very, very easily gone wrong, but... Everything went right somehow.
Yeah.
Also, I've decided, I'm gonna put it in my will that when I die, they have permission to use my body to make RoboCop. If it ever gets to that.
I feel like that's worthwhile.
Just so long as I don't die in some like horrible accident and then have to relive that trauma, you know?
Like a gang blasting you to bits.
Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, I don't live in Detroit, so I should be fine. Every other joke we make is like, oh, Detroit. But yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you finally watched this movie, and I'm even more glad that you enjoyed it as much as you did, because I just love this fucking movie.
What a bummer this episode would have been if I didn't like the movie.
There's always that part of me that's like worried, you know? Like, when we were doing the Escape from New York podcast, I was like going, oh god, what if he doesn't like it? And I was kind of worried the same thing would happen, but I had a feeling you would probably enjoy it, though. This seems like, I've seen this movie multiple times, I'm like thinking, this seems like something you would like. I mean, it doesn't, or at the very least, it seems like a movie that you would like stuff that's in it, you know, at the very least, Miguel Ferrer's performance and Kerwin Smith, you know.
Should we get into some trivia?
Okay, let's get into the trivia. This movie almost got an X rating.
Yeah, I can see that.
Due to the violence, obviously. So, because they didn't want it to have an X rating, they had to edit it down, and although most versions of it that you find are the unrated version, which basically has the stuff that got cut out in the theatrical version, so... Siskel and Ebert gave it positive reviews.
That's good.
Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars, praising Peter Weller's performance and the satirical tone. Leonard Maltin...
Oh, no.
What do you think? Do you think he thought this was better or worse than Batman Forever?
I'm going to say he thinks it's worse, and he gave it a 2 out of 4, is my guess.
He gave it a bomb. No, I'm kidding. He gave it a 3 out of 4, actually.
Oh, okay.
He liked it, but he apparently had some problems with it. He praised the action scenes and stop-motion effects, but thought the depiction of the future was too bleak.
Really? That's his criticism?
Remember, this guy didn't like The Dark Knight.
That's right.
He didn't like Taxi Driver either, so... Oh man, I would love to see that movie. RoboCop meets Taxi Driver. At the end, Travis, instead of like surviving, he gets like shot up and then turned into a RoboCop.
The Robo-Taxi Driver.
God, that would be great. Yeah, so RoboCop obviously spawned a lot of sequels and spin-offs, none of which were anywhere near as good as the first one. There was a cartoon.
You always got to have a cartoon.
Yeah, whenever there's a violent 80s action movie, of course there needs to be a cartoon of it and a toy line. Because why wouldn't there be? I mean, you know... You watch RoboCop, it's clearly a kid's movie.
I can't think of a single scene that kids would not enjoy.
Yeah, kids love the part where Bob Morton says, I fucking love that guy, or the locker room scene.
That they love seeing the one guy get melted by toxic waste.
And then destroyed by a car, or the part where Murphy gets like obliterated by shotgun blasts and dies horribly screaming. Yeah. Toys. Cartoon show. Somebody saw this and thought, toys, cartoon show.
I mean, they did it to Rambo. They can do it to anyone they want.
This is even more violent than Rambo is, too, Zoe. It makes it even more ridiculous. This is a movie that was so violent they had to cut stuff out of it to get it an R rating. There was a live-action TV series, a mini-series. There were 2 sequels and a remake. And the reason why I was hesitant on doing the sequels or the remake on the podcast is partly because they're not that good. But also, I just feel like there's not a lot to talk about.
I'm thinking about checking out 2 sometime after this. I'm not sure about 3.
The third one, yeah.
So I know they changed the actor in 3.
And it's also PG-13. That's another thing.
Oh, wow. They neutered that one.
The third one's basically like a... It's like they try to make RoboCop into like a superhero, and it's just... It's so like watered down. Like there's none of the satire from the first one. It's just... It's bad. It's not good. The second one... Okay, this might give you a reason to watch it. Okay, for one, Peter Weller and Nancy Allen returned.
Okay.
It was not directed by Paul Verhoeven. You might recognize the name of the guy who did direct it, though.
George Lucas.
No, close. Irvin Kershner.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And in case you're wondering, no, RoboCop 2 is not as good of a sequel as The Empire Strikes Back. One thing that's interesting about the second and third one, Frank Miller wrote a draft of the script, but it was not used. His draft was turned into a graphic novel, which I have read.
Was it any good?
It's one of the worst fucking things I've ever read. It is so bad. Like, it's what you would expect Frank Miller doing RoboCop would be like. Just really, like, edgelord type stuff. You know, like, if Zack Snyder made a RoboCop movie, he'd probably try to do that.
Oh, God. Oh, that's right, because Frank Miller did 300.
And also, just the drawings were just not good. It just sucked. It was so bad.
I think
if you want my
300 is the
thoughts
only-
on RoboCop 2 real quick, I think it's an okay movie. It tries to repeat some of what the first movie did, but to mixed results. Peter Weller, I think he's still good as RoboCop. There's some funny parts. At the very least, you should see some of the ads that are in this one, because there's some funny ads in it.
Okay.
They are a little bit more... They're more over the top than the ones in the first movie, but there's some funny stuff in there. There's some good action scenes. The stop motion's pretty good. It's just that the plot is really mediocre. And it really disappointed me that the whole man and the machine dynamic, it's just almost completely ditched from the movie. It's like mentioned and brought up in like 2 or 3 scenes, and then it's just, they give it a really disappointing resolution. Like, if you're really glad that RoboCop got his humanity back in the first movie, you probably won't like what they do in this one.
That's weird that they would just drop that, considering how important it actually is in this movie.
Yeah. It's also a more mean-spirited and cynical movie than the first. Like, there are satirical elements, but they aren't done as well as in the first. And the violence... Another thing is the violence is not treated in the over-the-top way that Verhoeven treated it. So it's just it's a very tonally messy movie. But the plot of it basically was that OCP decides to create another RoboCop, and they use the brain of Abby Normal. No, I'm kidding. They use the brain of a drug dealer.
Okay.
Who's like running this like kind of drug cult or something. And yeah, it goes as well as you think. Like, I think another problem I think is just the villains are nowhere near as good as in the first one. Like, Because, I mean, okay, doing an evil version of RoboCop, that's an interesting idea, but that's not... They don't actually get around to doing that until, like, the last third of the movie. But I will say about RoboCop 2, I don't think it's as bad as some people say it is, but it is... It's a disappointment coming off of the heels of the first movie. Which I guess was inevitable, but, like... One thing that is funny about that movie, though, is that at one point the city of Detroit declares bankruptcy, which 23 years after the movie came out, that did actually happen. So
that's pretty good.
Yeah. RoboCop 3, if you skip that one, you are not missing anything. Like, it's just...
Okay.
It's rated PG-13. There's no graphic violence. There's not much personality to it. Peter Weller isn't even in it, for fuck's sake. You have this other guy just doing a terrible RoboCop impression. Frank Miller also helped write this.
Nice.
Although I assume, like, the second one, basically most of his ideas were probably jettisoned. Because you can't really do a Frank Miller movie and have it be PG-13.
Yeah.
But that one, it's just RoboCop helping these rebels fight OCP. It's really generic and boring. It's just not good. RoboCop has a jetpack, and he's given rocket launchers, because he's just a superhero at that point. And he fights robot ninjas. Like, it sounds... You hear RoboCop fights robot ninjas, and that sounds awesome, but it's so lame and just stupid. It's not good. The remake, I don't know why the fuck you would remake RoboCop.
And you'd make him look like Judge Dredd.
Yeah. And once again, PG-13. You have Samuel L. Jackson in it, and they bleep out him saying motherfucker.
Really?
Yeah. It's missing what made RoboCop work, which was just the satire and, like, the personality, you know? I will say, though, it does have a decent cast for the most part, because I mentioned Samuel L. Jackson's in it. Gary Oldman is in it.
Oh.
And Michael Keaton is in it, and Michael Keaton...
Oh!
It seems like Michael Keaton is trying to do a Beetlejuice again. But one of the biggest problems with the movie is the guy playing Murphy.
Oh, that's disappointing.
He's not good. He acts more robotic as a human being than as a cyborg, which is a huge problem. And yeah, it's boring. It's generic. Again, PG-13. Horrible choice. Basically, this movie is more machine than man, twisted and evil. One thing, I have heard that they're thinking of doing another sequel called RoboCop Returns. And they basically said it would ignore the sequels and the remake, and it'd be more in line with the tone of the first movie, which, I mean... That sounds like a good course to take. You know, it's kind of like what they did with the new Halloween movies. Although, considering the current slate of most modern sequels and prequels, my expectations won't be too high for that. If it even gets made. It might not even get made, for all I know.
I kind of hope that we do get some sort of RoboCop content in the future, but I hope it's good. And it's not just like they've beaten a dead horse.
We haven't had good RoboCop content since 1987. So. Well, okay, I haven't played any of the video games. Maybe some of those are good.
Probably not.
You mentioned that Mortal Kombat game that had RoboCop in it.
Yeah, that one's fun, but it's not really a RoboCop game.
The RoboCop is in it, though.
Now, I will say there is actually
the best
one
RoboCop. I will say the best RoboCop remake is Be Kind Rewind.
So I will say, probably the most notable RoboCop game out there was
RoboCop versus the Terminator. Is that the one?
Well, there is that, but the one I was about to talk about, it's just called RoboCop. It came out in 2003. It's a completely random time for a RoboCop anything to come out, really.
2003?
Yeah. Guess who made this game?
Oh, was it Laughing, Joking, Numbnuts?
Nope. They did make, the same company did make another famously bad game.
Oh no, I'm trying to think. What's the famously bad game? Like
Superman 64.
oh, like the okay.
Yeah, so it's Titus. I'm pretty sure this is the game that killed the company.
The RoboCop game.
Yeah.
It basically just like obliterated that company like the Ed 209 obliterates Mr. Kenny in that one scene. Wow. That's impressive. Was there anything else we wanted to add about the video games, or
Not really, no.
except that RoboCop is in a Mortal Kombat game? That's pretty cool.
He fights Rambo. That's
What's
neat.
his fatality move in that?
I think it's how he kills.
Is it the transmitter where he stabs him in the neck?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Because I know he has a few. Let me look up RoboCop fatality.
That would make sense. That sounds like RoboCop.
Oh, he brings out Ed 209 for his fatality at one point.
Nice. Oh man. I will say though, okay, if they ever do make RoboCop Returns, I would be willing to do a podcast on that.
Okay.
Again, if they ever do that. I don't know if they will, but oh, this is funny since we mentioned him earlier. Okay. When the movie RoboCop was released on VHS, there was an event to promote the film put on by the Boys Club of America, and Richard Tricky Dick Nixon was there. And the result is one of my favorite photographs ever.
Oh. This is it. This has to be the picture you use for the video.
I'll definitely put the picture in the video at some point.
It's just Richard Nixon meeting RoboCop.
I know. That's not actually Peter Weller though, but still,
yeah, you can kind of tell. But...
That's pretty cool though. That's so funny.
Oh,
I'm trying to imagine Richard Nixon sitting down and watching RoboCop.
It would feel weird, I think. It's almost like seeing Mikhail Gorbachev in a Pizza Hut commercial.
Pizza Hut commercial. Yeah. I bet he just sat and watched RoboCop and he's like, Patton was better. But yeah, that's like no joke. That is like one of my favorite photographs I've ever seen. And it's even funnier when you remember that the main villain from RoboCop is also named Dick. So
yeah.
Imagine Dick Cheney took a picture of RoboCop. Also, when I was watching the Criterion DVD,
yeah,
I briefly went through the special features. I watched some of the trailers included on there. One of the original trailers for this movie used the music from the Terminator.
What?
It's like so obviously Terminator music. And you can probably guess which track it is too. Yeah.
Was it the main theme?
Yes.
The title? Nice. Yeah, what?
It's better that played with RoboCop.
That's bizarre.
The 2014 RoboCop remake had an Asylum ripoff called Android Cop.
Oh no.
And that's not even the only RoboCop ripoff either. There's tons of them, yeah. I actually, yesterday, that DVD I have, Sci-Fi Invasion 50 movie pack that has 2 RoboCop ripoffs on there.
Oh, good.
It has Rotor on it and Robo Vampire.
Ooh, Robo Vampire. That one sounds good.
Of those 2 movies, Robo Vampire is the superior one, but not by much. Not by much. Because they're both just schlock. I mean, what do you expect?
That's just RoboCop. On the poster, that's just RoboCop.
I know, yeah, the poster, like, it shows RoboCop. Like, he looks sort of like RoboCop in the movie, but not quite like that. So, more trivia. The screenplay had been offered to and rejected by virtually every big director in Hollywood before Paul Verhoeven got hold of it. He threw it away after reading the first few pages, convinced it was just a dumb action movie. His wife, Martine, read it all the way through and convinced him that the story was layered with many satirical and allegorical elements, leading Verhoeven to direct the film.
It's definitely a good thing that he picked it up then.
Yeah.
And it sounds like he was kind of the right person for the job.
Yeah, and as we see later in Total Recall, he was definitely the right person for that job, too.
Yeah.
We should do a Total Recall podcast at some point. That'd be fun. Or Starship Troopers. We can do Starship Troopers.
Could make a good double feature.
Oh, shit. I need to feed the cats.
Real quick.
We've been going on a long time, so we can stop here, actually.
Yeah, I was about to say, we probably should wrap it up soon.
Okay. RoboCop.
Fantastic.
If you haven't seen it, watch it. If you have seen it, fuck it, watch it again. It's a great movie.
And I think with that, it's time for the Andy Griff of...
Yep.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.